a star. They let you do it. You can do anything.
So Donald Trump's friends are now calling for immigrants to be sterilized after the Supreme Court ruled against him on birthright citizenship. This is Sean Davis. He's the CEO of The Federalist and friend of Donald Trump, and he says there's ways to go around the Supreme Court ruling. He says nullification, pack the court with MAGA justices, deny entry to all pregnant foreigners. What? Deny entry to all women, and then finally he says require sterilization of all foreign visitors prior to entry. This guy is insane. MAGA is insane. He also calls for the dissolution of the union or amending the Constitution, just changing it because they don't like it. People like this guy and Donald Trump and the people around him are just straight up evil. They would very much benefit from going outside every once in a while, finding a hobby, touching grass, just something that gets you out of the house so you don't fall into this weirdo pipeline.
The serious medical neglect at Delaney Hall are an incredibly clear example of modern eugenics. Federal investigations led by Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff found an undeniable pattern of human rights abuses across immigration detention centers in the United States. They also found over 1,000 credible reports of medical neglect, including detainees being denied insulin, being left without medication or medical care for days, and pay outrageous amounts of money for clean water. At the GEO Group-run Adelanto ICE Processing Center and the California City Detention Facility, people with serious illnesses like prostate cancer have been repeatedly denied urgent care. Detainees in severe pain have often been told by staff to just take vitamin C or buy Tylenol from the commissary. Disability Rights California found serious problems with wound care, frequent cases of preventable respiratory illnesses, a total lack of basic support for people with physical, developmental, and mental disabilities. This kind of cruelty has been part of the U.S. prison system for centuries. It is similar to early 20th century asylum policies, where the state controlled disabled people by denying them food and sanitation until their health failed. With that said, family members and advocates, including Gabriela Soto, whose husband Martin is a strike organizer inside Delaney Hall, shared that detainees were given live worms in their beans and salad. They also said they were given expired green sausages, spoiled milk, and moldy food. And this is happening at facilities across the country.
The way that the Trump administration has handled immigration enforcement is cruel, and they lied to the American people.
Thank you.
You know, they told the American people that they were going to go after, quote, the worst of the worst. But that's not what the administration has actually done.
Nope.
And by their own data, 70% of the people that ICE has detained or deported have no criminal record at all.
Exactly. You know, what pulled me into this fight was seeing a 2-month-old baby in the Dilley Detention Center. And I'm a critical care doctor for kids. I saw him and I was like, that child is sick.
The way that we shift public opinion on this is by elevating these stories, right?
Absolutely.
Elevating the stories. You know, with your help and a lot of other people who've been telling these stories, particularly online and in digital media, we have made a difference.
Yeah.
When they fired Kristi Noem and fired Dan Bavino and fired Corey Lewandowski and brought in Mark Wayne Mullen, they did that only because they realized that they had a major PR problem. They have stopped the sort of big flashy surges into American cities like Minneapolis, right? They're not doing this because they think it's the right thing to do or because they care about, you know, the human rights of people or the constitutional rights of people on U.S. soil. They're doing this in response to the public pressure that we are all collectively putting on, and especially the storytelling. Like, oh, we got to keep elevating the stories and continue to focus on winning that public relations war until Democrats can take back Congress in November and we can actually pass laws to put some real restrictions in place around what they're doing.
Matthew 25 says, whatever you do to the vulnerable, you do to God. Christians need to look at ICE right now. Kids are being ripped from families and abused in detention centers under Trump policies the UN called ethnic cleansing. We need to file UN human rights complaints today. This crimmigration system has deep roots. Hannah Bradshaw's paper, Good and Moral Victims, breaks down how the 1994 Violence Against Women Act expanded the carceral state. It forced undocumented survivors to prove their good moral character just to get lawful status. We make victims prove they are moral while ignoring state-sponsored abuse.
I'm going to be taking a reading from Father Gabriel's Exodus Explained the Manic. The answer seems already fallen angels, the risk of liberty. So why does God permit evil? We have spoken evil spells, possession, vexation, obsession, infestation. Now the question arises, why does God permit evil? First, it is necessary to make clear that God, being infinite love, does not wish evil. He simply permits it because he created men and angels as free creatures. Simply put, men are free to choose whether they wish to live for God or against him, and therefore to opt for heaven or for hell. We must recognize that God has made everything to make man happy. In accordance with his plan, God has asked man to obey the laws he has established, but God has also given man the ability to refuse his truth. This is the situation in which we are placed. The first who had to choose, as we had already said, were the angels, who in the case of demons, chose to tempt men or attract men themselves. The second dimension of time is man, and so it falls on each of us individually to make a choice. John's Gospel says of Christ, all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. John chapter 1, verse 3. Could God has given creation a greater goal than himself, the ability, a possibility, and joy, the vision of the cause for eternal joy. We in fact live for him, and there could be no more marvelous goal. Therefore, the rebellion of angels, excessive disobedience of man, tells us that evil is a concrete possibility and that God has permitted in order to make us free. And here we are before a great mystery, that creatures freely choose evil rather than good. This is a great risk that God has taken with creatures, angels, and man. He has taken it for a simple reason, because without free will, that is without the possibility of choosing between good and bad, we would be robots and not totally free creatures. Liberty, infinite in God, is a sign of our greatness and our sonship in Jesus Christ. Without it, we can all call ourselves but only slaves. God has given us everything. We must recognize only him, adore only him, guide by only him, because inevitably, if we do not give to God, we necessarily give to idols. He who is not with me is against me. Jesus says, Matthew chapter 12, verse 30. Half measures do not exist. Either we have Christ or we are Satan. At times we like to go halfway. Serving Christ part way with us is not possible. The devious method that the devil uses Adam and Eve works with us. It leads us to think that evil and sin do not exist, that to sin, distancing ourselves from God, trying each thing for pleasure, experiences against in the end what evil is here. Again, half measures do not exist for the Christian. Either you're of Christ, love and peace, or you're Satan, hatred, and everything else that's open rebellion against God. You cannot cherry pick what you follow. You cannot serve God partially. Every single action that you do, every single word that you speak, again, is recorded, is accounted in the final judgment. What you do to others, what you say to others matters. Every single action that you do is a choice, whether to live for God or against him. At times, in order to counsel my clients who have been tried by long years of possession, I remind them that if they have found faith to begin a true Christian life, it is because they have began a hard struggle against the evil that they are suffering. As a result, the devil is already defeated. At the start, it is true that God permits evil, but there is another truth that accompanies it without our knowing. God also puts a limit to evil, limiting action of Satan against man. We have a very example of the book of Job. Satan obtains permission to vex Job, but God forbids him to touch Job. Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only put on himself, do not put forth the hand. Job chapter 1, verse 2, verse 12. God always has the last word. Again, God permits evil, but again, God also limits the action of Satan against us humans. God always has the last word. So again, you have a choice, either live for or against God by your actions. Everything that is not love and peace is of Satan. This is a fact. The people consumed, dominated by hatred, and hatred is open rebellion against God. And this is found in 1 John chapter 3, verses 11 through 15. Those who are hatred are consumed by darkness. They do not have God's Holy Spirit. They are not saved. They are under the ruler of this world, and they are under demonic influence, if not outright possession, by that type of demon. Again, protect the victims of hatred and wrong. Safeguard human life. Not only be an advocate for change, but actively put yourself in front of all these victims of this wicked and abominable administration that is open rebellion against God. Again, as a priest, as a deliverance minister, I stand with the Catholic Church against the Trump administration. I urge you to do the same. Protect the victims of hatred and wrong, especially the children that are being abused in ICE detention facilities, and the people outright being murdered and lynched, especially out here in the United States, as is the case the past number of weeks. So again, Camino Don Dios, God bless you, God go with you. May the peace of God be with you, always.